We are so excited to continue our partnership with Kering at the 75th Cannes Film Festival for this very important program. Kering's Women in Motion Talks celebrates female contributions to cinema and beyond. We're not just talking about the film industry, but also pushing gender equality forward in society. Today we have two fantastic guests for you, Keough and Gina Gammell. The two are making their directorial debut on War Pony, and they are business partners with their own production company. You know Riley from her wide range of work as an actor, and now she is stepping behind the camera. We are so excited to talk to these two impressive women, so let's get started. For everyone here, we only ask you to please keep your cell phones on silent. You are free to take video and picture and post, but we just don't want any sound interrupting the conversation. Okay. Hi. Good to see you again.
Put the reference, stay to 1 minute. Thank you for sitting down. In the meantime, please turn off your cell phone, at least put it on silent. We highly appreciate it. 1 minute, guys.
Please. Yes, please. Ladies, over here, please. Thank you very much. Please, the music, yes. Thank you very much. Ladies, please, just you. Now facing you.
Any distance?
And ready, one more. Yes. Thank you very much.
Ready?
Merci, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Are your eyes okay?
It's very bright in
Right?
here.
Very bright, a lot of flashes, but there's worse problems to have. Look where we are,
I
right?
know. So beautiful.
Quite the view.
It is.
Alrighty, so congratulations.
Thanks.
I want to know, what was your reaction when you found out that your film was selected and that you'd be coming to Cannes?
Who screamed?
Yeah, they really left it to the last minute to tell us. I was in my trailer at work, and I think I got a little dizzy and had to sit down for a minute. We were, screaming and freaking out. This is not something we ever anticipated for this project. It was something that was a very personal thing that we did with our friends. And, you kind of forget sometimes that people are going to watch it and that it's, things will happen. And I think that Cannes is just, it was kind of a pipe dream, I think. So it's pretty amazing, yeah.
So obviously, we're going to talk a lot about the film, and I want to get into that. But first, how did the two of you meet? And I know you have your own production company. This is both of your directorial debuts. But how did you first meet, and kind of talk to me about the process that you two became partners?
Yeah, we met through friends.
Okay.
We met I think at a Cinesphere screening of American Psycho,
yeah.
which is kind of fitting for us. We were very fast friends. I think Riley moved into my house 2 weeks later. I don't know why you didn't have a home at the time.
I think it was by choice.
By choice.
Yeah.
And we were very fast friends, and then the rest followed very quickly. I think we were both at places in our career where she was feeling like she'd always wanted to do more than act, and I was feeling like I was not quite living my purpose, and we started collaborating quite quickly after we became friends on various, little ideas, little creative projects and writing.
We kind of started writing together pretty instantly.
Yeah.
Riley, I read somewhere, so you don't believe everything you read, but I think I read that you thought you wanted to be a director before you became an actor. Is that true?
That's true, yeah. That's what I wanted to do, is write and direct as a young child, and I would kind of make little movies with my friends, and I would never act in them, and acting kind of was something that I did want to do, but it kind of came later, so that was kind of my original sort of desire, was to direct and write films, yeah.
And then how did you end up getting into acting?
I got into acting because I just felt like I wanted to do all of it, and I had a feeling that it would, that I'd really enjoy it. And an opportunity came up to audition for something, and I think I was 18. And I kind of went, well, if I never try it, I'll never know. And I booked my very first audition. So it was kind of, if that hadn't happened, I don't know, if I would have continued acting. And then, in the beginning, it was kind of like, is this what I really want to do? And then I just, it continued to be sort of fruitful. So I just kept going. Yeah.
Gina, tell me a little bit about your upbringing and how you kind of got into this creative field.
I grew up, my father had a job that made us travel a lot, but my father's actually, I shouldn't say it, but he's a failed theatre director. So he was a theatre director who kind of, my mother got pregnant, he's like, oh, I need to get a job that pays the bills, and stopped. So I think that when we were growing up, we were very much, involved in the arts as a family, and taken to theatre and films, and it was a huge part of my upbringing. And so I think that I, like Riley, we have that in common, knew very, very, very early on that I wanted to direct and make films, and we kind of both have those embarrassing home movies.
Mine are fantastic.
Riley's like, they're not embarrassing, speak for yourself.
So yeah, it was. I think I was very fortunate to be exposed to a lot of stuff through my father, and then it just was always the part of what I felt my life's purpose was.
For whoever wants to jump in.
Would you say that if your movie didn't get into Cannes? She'd be like, it's kind of a hobby.
It would be a hobby. Yeah.
Well, actually, you're joking, Riley, but you bring up a good point. What does Cannes mean for both of you now as filmmakers in terms of the next step of your career?
I mean, I think it's just, you make something and you like it sometimes, and or you kind of go back and forth. And I think having other people appreciate it, I think, I don't know, something I don't think that I wish we didn't need, but it definitely helps you kind of continue being like, oh, okay. Doing something that,
it's like a validation.
it's not just me that thinks it wants to watch it.
I feel like we're both a little bit like whatever art we make is always as okay as the last person told us it was, and I think like Cannes gives it a validation of like, oh, Cannes thinks it's okay, so that we can keep going.
Yes. Yeah. So let's talk about your film. I know that it kind of came up. It wasn't like you had this specific idea and purpose. It kind of came up by chance on the set of American Honey. So can you kind of talk about the origin story?
Yeah. Well, I was filming American Honey in 2015, and there were 2 actors who were hired locally to do a scene with me, and the scene got pushed to after lunch, so we ended up having like 6 hours and just made really good friends. And it was just, one of those friendships where you kind of meet and instantly just can't stop talking and get along really well. And so, yeah, it started like that. It was just a friendship, and they lived in South Dakota in Pine Ridge. And so we just would go hang out with them, with our friends. And I invited Gina to come hang out one summer, and we were in our early 20s at the time, and it was just a friendship. And I think that all of us were kind of interested in making things, and we were interested in making films. Frank was making music. Bill was making gardens. And we just were, in our early 20s, just kind of hanging out, making music videos, or we made like a little VR short. And the idea for it was this is, a long time ago now, so it was a very slow kind of burn, and it just started with, it was notes in our phone, and just kind of like, oh, this would be a funny idea for, and then it sort of started turning into this script thing, and there were different variations of it, and then we all, at some point, I don't know how long into it, I think about a year, we had kind of like a rough draft in final draft, and then we started just actually sitting around, and it was honestly like a hobby. It was something we were all doing for fun. Like, we didn't really have a goal. Certainly didn't think we were going to end up at Cannes. And it was just like a fun thing that we all did together. And then it turned into a film.
So at what point did it go from hobby to film, when you realized, oh, we actually maybe should start to finance this?
I think when we sent it to some people, again, sent it out, and people were like, oh, this is, interesting, and we were like, oh, okay. I guess like we'll kind of go in and really take it more seriously.
Now, I don't know if anyone here watching has seen the film, so whoever wants to jump in, can you discuss what it's about?
It is
There's no plot.
No plot.
Experimental.
No, I would say it's a kind of coming of age with a 23-year-old man and a 11-year-old boy living on Pine Ridge Reservation, and it's a coming of age that deals with life stuff.
Can you talk about the casting process?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was a very slow burn, because we were kind of, like, oh, we're kind of making a film. We just really wanted to all hang out together, I think. Like, that was really, we just wanted to spend time together, and it was like a fun hobby thing. So once we had a bit of a script, I think we had a couple people that we knew that were local that we wanted to audition, I guess, and we would kind of do these improv-y kind of loose scenarios that the actors would kind of improvise through with our casting director, Eleanor Hendricks, and ourselves. And it was very,
It was long.
It was long, and it was, there was not really a method. Like, it was, you'd kind of meet someone and go, oh, they're kind of great, let's see what happens, and kind of bring them in and read them. And I think also once we had producers interested and sent the script out, and it was becoming more of a real thing, I think we started doing actual casting trips and being like, okay, let's put a cast together.
But it was also, like, we were very, very committed to casting it entirely locally. Like, we didn't want to go out of the reservations, surrounding reservations, to cast this film. And I think that it made, when we started being like, oh, we're probably making a film, I think that when we'd go on trips, even if they weren't casting trips, that we would just be meeting people, and then suddenly you'd meet someone, and like all the little boys in the film, like Riley and I were just at the gas station, and we saw this group of boys that were like entirely what us, along with Frank and Bill, had kind of created, or like, you know, because it's kind of a manifestation of Bill and Frank when they were younger, and we just pulled over the car and started talking to them, and then that's how we met. Three of those boys was just at the gas station, so. It was like the rest of the process. It was incredibly organic, and we just took our time because we were really, really, really committed to casting it locally.
Well, with that said, with casting it locally, obviously authenticity is so important in filmmaking. So how did you ensure that you would be responsibly telling the story that isn't yours? Whoever wants to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a very kind of personal project to, you know, the boys, and our relationships are personal to us. And from the beginning, it was really just writing word for word what they wanted to say, how they wanted to say it, sitting down, giving them, you know, spending hours and hours kind of going, okay, then what do you want to happen, you know, and what do you want that tone to be? What do you want the camera to look like? They didn't want handheld, you know, just like every little detail of how do you want this to look? How do you want it to feel? What does this scene mean to you? What do you want the tone to be? So there's no sort of, our gaze is really not, you know, present as much as we could. And so it was just, you know, every day making sure that in every moment that, you know, this is feeling right. Even with the actors we hired, you know, making sure that their scenes felt authentic to them, and if they didn't, they would change them. And you know, they were entirely on book, which is something that I think is really impressive, and I like to share because it does feel a bit improvised when you watch it. And they, you know, just kind of every day going, you know, does this feel good? Let's rehearse it. Is this something that you relate to? Is this, you know? And then they go, well, no, you know, this shouldn't be like that. It should be like this. So we go, okay, so what should we put in the script? And they go, you know, put this in. So it was just every day, just making sure that everything was feeling authentic to our actors and our writers, and
Yeah, I think each step of the collaboration, there was like the writing process, and then the casting process, and then the shooting process. It's like it was constantly evolving with who the most direct lines of collaboration were, because obviously once you're on set and working with the actors, it's like it was what the actors wanted. When it was writing, it was what the writer, you know. So I think that it was kind of a mission of like, is there a way to responsibly and consciously and collaborate? And I think
between communities, and you know, of course, we had a lot of challenges, and it's not something that you can just, you know, it took 7 years of building our relationships and understanding nuances, and you know, that kind of became our sort of goal, is how do we responsibly collaborate between communities, and I feel really proud of what we were able to do, though there were definitely challenges. Yeah.
It really sounds like it was a true collaboration. I know that one of the producers on the film had said that a lot of filmmakers had visited the area, but just kind of came with their cameras and that was it. And it didn't feel like an authentic story, but it sounds like you really, 7 years, you know, you're working hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's typical, you know, in film, right? And storytelling is going in as filmmakers to communities and going, you know, where's the story here? And then making your film. And it kind of, I think to start, that's not how this started. This was, you know, 4 of us in our early 20s just being like, oh, we don't care, like we're just having fun, you know. So it started from a different place, you know. There was no real intention to make a actual film. We were kind of, you know. So I think that because it started, you know, in a way that was very sort of from our personal relationships that meant so much to us, that just wasn't the tone to begin with. And just blossomed into this thing that just kind of happened between all of us and our friends and families and relatives. And yeah, I mean, and then, you know, of course, historically, you know, in Pine Ridge specifically, you know, it's a real thing. And so we're, you know, just being extremely conscious of, the way that we were collaborating, and there were a lot of challenges. Bringing a group of people, a crew, into a community that you've spent 7 years in. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to work.
Right.
And so that was, I would say, one of the biggest challenges for us, for all of us, for myself, Gina. I want to speak for Willie and the rest of the guys, but I know that that was challenging, and just having to stay present and be mindful in every moment of, okay, this has come up today, and how do we work through this with this crew member has, that we had a wonderful crew, but there are nuances in the community that we didn't have time to, explain to, and so we were responsible for this, massive group of people that we were bringing in that we'd just met the week before, so it was, that was very challenging. Yeah. But we, you can't do something like this without challenges. Right. And I think that we were just trying to lead, with our hearts and be as mindful and responsible in every moment as we could be, and we got through, I think we were, again, I do feel proud of, what everybody was able to kind of, it was a beautiful working relationship.
A beautiful
and
working
friendship.
Yes. And we are really like a big family now. Like we have very, very, very deep friendships, and with, not only the cast and our collaborators, but also their families. We're very, very lucky in that space.
It also sounds like part of the magic that you can't recreate just because it's, every time in your life and time in your career, but part of the magic is that you both are first-time directors. The actors were newcomers, so everybody was kind of discovering this process together.
100%, and I think that was, it was all very natural. There was no let's go in and write a film and then go, it was, and it was the four of us to begin with, and we're like, hey, let's try, let's send it out, let's see who likes it, and they're like, and then we're like, I guess we'll direct it. We're the two here with the most film experience out of the four of us, so let's move forward with that.
Yeah, if someone had said this is the first film that you and Riley will direct together, I would have been like, there's no way. The stuff that we were writing before this was just so different.
So it was all kind of every step of the way, we'll see what happens, and then here we are. Yeah.
What are some other projects that you were working on before?
Well, the very first thing we started writing together was this sort of sci-fi movie that was very expensive. Don't think we would have ever gotten that made. Judging by how difficult it was to get financing for our small film. And then, we never completed anything. We kind of would just, float ideas around. Maybe we were 22 at the time, and kind of just living life and writing little things on the weekend together. But this was the first thing that any of us had ever completed, Gina and I, in terms of a script from, front to back. So it was a real, experience, and it was not a traditional script writing experience. So now, after that, trying to write together is very interesting. It's very different.
Are you working on anything now that you are able to share?
Yeah, we're writing a film at the moment. That is just sort of about, greed and lust and relationships and America. And
Riley's looking at Gina what can I say? What can I
reveal?
She's the one
that's don't send the link out.
I see that link. How much can I say?
No. She's the boss.
Yeah, but she said everything. It's a familial relationship story that deals with a lot of, like she said, consumption, greed, America, lust, sex.
I don't want to oversell it, but it's very Shakespearean.
It is quite Shakespearean.
Riley, will you ever want to act in a project that you direct?
I don't think so, because it's kind of two parts of my brain, and when I'm acting, I really need to be, I guess I have Gina, but I really need to be directed. It's really hard. I don't think I'd be able to do both at the same time. I'd lose perspective. I think Gina could direct me. It might be we're like sisters, so it might be, wild if she's directing.
Right.
I don't know how that would go. But it's, maybe.
It'd probably be her best work. Yeah.
I think that, maybe one day. I don't know. I'm not, interested in my own
And
acting,
then
to be honest.
fast forward to next year, and she's the
I'm
star
the
of
star
our
of
next
our-
movie.
Yeah. I definitely prefer watching other actors to watching myself. So.
Do you want to continue acting, though? Do you think that
Oh,
you'll
yeah.
always do both?
Well, we'll see. No, I do. I love it. I love acting. Yeah.
So at Cannes, in the main competition, there are only 3 films that are directed by women.
Yes.
And that's disappointing, to say
Yeah.
the least. There's been a big push at this festival, but also just industry-wide for more representation with women behind the camera.
Yeah.
What do you think that says about where the industry is at?
I think that, I think it's much more fundamental. I'm curious as to how many women were in a position to submit to Cannes, how many women got the financing that they needed. Just from our own experiences, that was very difficult. Especially when we compare it to our, male friends we know. We also have a production company, so we see these things happening,
Right.
every day. And, we know many first-time male filmmakers who are getting a lot more money than, the female first-time filmmakers that we know. So that there is a sort of very profound, maybe, distrust in, women leading in spots, places of leadership. That maybe people aren't even aware of. Maybe it's so subconscious, So those are the things that I see happening, and So I think it's very fundamental, and I think it's women need the opportunities that men are being given.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you said first-time male filmmakers that are getting financing much easier.
Yeah.
But you're also, yes, you're a first-time filmmaker, but you've been in this industry for years.
You think that would help?
Yes. I mean, let's just say it how it is.
Yeah.
You've made a name for yourself,
Yeah.
but you also come from a Hollywood family.
Yeah.
So when you walk in rooms, people know who you are from your own work and from beyond. And if you're having trouble getting stuff made, then what does that mean for the average
100%.
person?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. If I'm having trouble, what does that mean for somebody who's not, isn't an actress and who has the relationships that I have? I mean, I see it all the time with female, filmmakers. Female filmmakers I've worked with. For Ginas Gammell, for Zola, her budget wasn't very big. She could have had a much bigger budget for that. And she's not a first-time filmmaker, and extremely a genius. So those are the things that, are still an issue.
Yeah. Speaking of Zola, one question. What did you think about the reaction to that film?
Oh, I mean, there were many.
Yes.
I thought, I'm fascinated by reactions to films, and I think everybody's entitled to have their reaction to art. And I think especially when you're working with artists who want to create that effect, like Ginas, who is, I don't think she's looking for people to have boring conversations about her art. So I just appreciate the conversations.
So I'm curious, I mentioned, you obviously come from a legendary Hollywood family.
Yes.
I'm curious, your time as an actor, I think some people could think that could help, but also I think there could be preconceived notions and you want to make your own name for yourself. Yeah. So I'm curious, well, I guess first, because as a journalist, you should never ask 2 questions at once. So first, I'll ask.
Wow, it's like,
yeah, exactly.
Very professional.
How was that for you when you were starting as an actor, kind of walking into rooms?
I think that when I began, instead of feeling, I think there was a sense, and I could have been projecting this, but I felt a sense of oh, okay, let's see what you can do, nepotism, you know what I mean? So I think and I'm really sensitive, so I think it just made me really nervous a lot. So I was kind of ooh, should I go? Sorry for being here, So that was kind of, that was my interpretation of, what it felt like. It helps you in so many ways. It helps you have more resources. I got an agent, much, easier than I think my fellow friends would be getting agents, but at the end of the day, you have to walk in and perform, and I think it was just made me nervous, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think I would just get kind of, I felt like there was a pressure of like, oh, let's see if you can, I don't know, do some act.
Yeah. I
can.
Yeah, clearly you can. We've all seen it. I think you bring up a really good point, though, that any connection in any industry, it could help you, like you said, get an agent. It helps you get the foot into the door, but then you have to do the work.
For sure.
So now I'm curious, the second part of my question is, now that you are stepping behind the camera and you're really interested in filmmaking, do you still think that there's that perception that ties you to your family, or do you think that you've kind of been able to separate yourself and say, now I want to do this?
I mean, I think it's separate in inherently because it's not music as well. I think for somebody like my mother, that would have been more difficult because there was like a comparison thing, and although my grandparents did do acting, it wasn't the primary focus. So I think that there's a level of separation. There's also a generation of separation. So I honestly didn't feel much from it, other than maybe my own little things when I was starting out of like, oh, hopefully, hope they like me,
Right.
But I'm very grateful for, the wonderful benefits that I've been able to have because of these things as well.
So, twist of fate would have it.
I know, fate would have it.
That you're at Cannes, and there is an Elvis film at Cannes. I believe you've seen it. Is that right?
I have seen it, yes.
What did you think?
That's a very long. I probably have a very long answer to that, but I will say.
We have time.
Yeah, doing okay. I will say, it was a very emotional experience to watch. I watched it with my mother and my grandmother, and my sisters, and my father, and it's very intense to watch when it's your family. It's an interesting position to be in, where there's kind of free reign over like who gets to tell your story. Like there's no, we don't really have control over. It kind of goes back to telling somebody else's story. And hoping, and there is something in that where you're like, oh, it feels like you're this is, ours. And there's so I think initially I felt like, you feel a little like, I hope that you want them to do a great job, and you want them to get it right, and I think that Baz is, the first movie I ever watched in the theater where I went, I want to make movies, was Moulin Rouge, and I was 12, and so that was a really, it was a real honor to know that he was interested in making this film, and I immediately, I'm such a fan of his, and I was as a kid, and, Romeo and Juliet, and Moulin Rouge, for the age I was at the time, were really impactful. So it was kind of this, wow, that's a really interesting. So it wasn't as though I distrusted Baz in any kind of way, but you're protective over your story, over your family, and I think that I saw the work he put in, and he wanted to sit down with everybody and give everybody time, and I could tell kind of right off the bat that he really cared that we felt heard and seen, and so that was nice. And and so I had an idea that it was going to be, he was starting it sort of the right way, and then, but I really had no idea what it was going to be like, of course. So I watched it, and it was really, I think in the first sort of 5 minutes for me, I could just feel how much work Baz and Austin had put into trying to get it right. And that made me emotional immediately. So I started crying 5 minutes in, and I don't think I stopped. So it was so my first watch, I'd like to watch it again, because it was just very intense, and there's a lot of family trauma and generational trauma that sort of started around there for our family. So it's it was a very intense experience. But it's so, I just felt really, at the end of the day, I felt so honored that they worked so hard to really get his essence, to feel his essence, and I really felt like Austin captured that so beautifully. And you know, I'm a pretty, when it's your family, you're sort of extra critical, right? So it was, I wasn't expecting to be so impacted by Austin's performance and by what Baz was able to do, and yeah, I loved it. I did.
It sounds like Baz came to your family to discuss. So how involved were you and your mother and your grandmother in kind of talking to them and helping them with whatever they may have needed?
Yeah, well, Baz sort of sat down with my mom and I for a couple hours, and my grandma, I don't know how much time they spent together. They definitely spent time together. And he was just, you know, he was very involved in sort of, you know, our family was very involved in sort of, you know, helping him get to Graceland and speaking to whoever he needed to speak to, and kind of providing the resources that he needed. And yeah, you know, at the end of the day, we're not going to tell Baz Luhrmann how to, you know, make a movie.
Right. We are, I believe, right around the same age within a year. So the movies that you mentioned,
yeah,
like,
you're like, oh.
I get it. I'm like, those were very impactful, I think, for all of us.
Yeah.
So we are just about to turn to audience questions. But my last question about that film, did Baz ever offer you a role in it?
He didn't, and I, you know, I mean, I couldn't play my grandmother, you know, she was, you know, I think I'm the same age as Austin or older than him, you know, so that wouldn't have worked. And I don't know, I wouldn't want to. It's like, it's a little too, you know, close.
You're like, it's intense enough to
it's
watch.
intense enough to watch. I don't want to like act it, you know, so yeah.
But you all look so much alike. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I could see it. And that's why I was wondering, they may have wanted you, but you're like, I'm going to be an
it was
audience
actually
member.
kind of never a conversation. And I think that that was a beautiful thing. You know, it was, I wouldn't have wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe there was a boundary there that felt respected in a nice way. I don't know. It's like, why do I, Also, again, it's Baz Luhrmann, he can cast his own movie.
Right. Alrighty, so I think we have a bit of time for audience questions. I think there's a microphone.
Yes, Friday, please. I would love to know, what did you learn on a set working with Lodge Kerrigan? It was so amazing to do this series.
Yes, Lodge Kerrigan is a fantastic director. I think he was the first director that really directed me and kind of didn't let me like have free reign of like, you know, before that I was kind of like, I'm gonna look where I want and sit where I want, and there's no blocking, and you know what I mean? Like, he was kind of like the first director that kind of made me realize the importance of, you know, moments and where I, you know, and staying true to, you know, the script a little bit. And he's also just a wonderful person and allowed so much freedom, but also had such a clear vision, performance-wise and camera-wise. And yeah, I really enjoyed working with Lodge.
Do we have time for one more?
And with Andrea Arnold, so different from Lodge Kerrigan?
Very different.
Yeah.
Kind of the opposite. You know, she's wonderful. You know, I think that her kind of thing, which was equally, a very different way of filmmaking, was to kind of just let everybody be and kind of disappear in the room, and kind of really didn't. Probably the closest experience I've had as a performer to feeling like it's, you know, real life in the moment.
Hello. Now you act and direct. I'd like to know what kind of experience did you have when you growing up? What is your favorite movies or movies you influenced by? Music?
Yeah.
Did you both into music and films? And what kind of cultural interest did you have when you're small?
I always loved just all kinds of art and movies and music. I'm not like a genre-specific person in music or film. I like kind of all kinds of things. I love art films. I love, you know, rom-coms. I love, you know, all kinds of things. And my music taste is kind of similar. I'm all over the place, really.
All right, so now we have some questions from social media that were
Okay.
sent in.
Okay.
I have
Oh,
my
gosh.
phone right here. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so these are both from Instagram. So Gina, I'm going to start with you, but then same question for you, Riley. Which female directors have inspired you?
Oh, wow.
Oh, so many. I mean,
Are there?
No, but
Just kidding.
no, there's not. I would say like Lynn Ramsey is
Yeah.
just a genius. Ginas.
Yeah.
Claire Denis, like there's, Jane Campion, obviously. So many.
Yeah.
Any more names to add?
I think that I get really inspired when I work with female directors and get to watch them like on the day in the moment. So I would have to say also Ginas was a real kind of very inspirational to me, and her ability to, have such control over the set and such a clear vision, but also allow the most freedom I've ever experienced as a performer. And she's, everyone says they're an actor's director, but she really is kind of, was that for me in a very profound way. And it was the first time I'd really kind of, when you do little things and you have somebody on the other side of the camera that's like, oh, I saw that. There's nothing kind of like that.
So for anyone who didn't hear, when Gina said there's so many, then Riley went, are there? Kind of a little nod to the statistics with female directors. So this wasn't the social media question, but I'm going to take it one step further. Just who are some women, whether it's in the industry or in your lives, who have inspired both of you?
Riley for me.
I was going to say Gina.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right, there's one more question. Okay, this one's for Riley. Does the memory of your grandfather shape who you are as an artist today?
I don't think well, I don't know, maybe like somewhere in my DNA. But the memory, I think my whole story shapes the artist I am, probably. My whole family, my every moment of it, and I'm sure that that's a large part of who I am today.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the audience for the questions,
Yeah,
for
thank
Instagram
you
for the
guys.
questions, and thank you, Riley and Gina.
Thank you.